Japan's railways once crawled between Tokyo and Osaka in 7 grueling hours, steam engines choking on the ruins of war. Yet by 1964, the Shinkansen, the world's first bullet train, cut that journey in half at a breathtaking 210 kilometers per hour. This was no miracle. It was a nation's bold gamble on technology, leadership, and survival. But why risk everything for a new rail line? And how did it reshape Japan's future? In the aftermath of World War II, Japan's railways struggled beneath the weight of a broken nation. Tracks twisted by bombing raids, bridges collapsed into rivers, and stations stood in ruins. By the early 1950s, the population had surged into cities, but the trains connecting them lagged far behind. Steam locomotives, once the pride of Japanese engineering, now belched smoke across overcrowded platforms, crawling between Tokyo and Osaka in journeys that stretched over 7 hours. Every carriage overflowed. Commuters clung to straps for hours, pressed shoulder to shoulder, while goods trains queued for hours just to move a few kilometers. Factories in Osaka and Nagoya relied on these same lines, but delays and bottlenecks choked the flow of coal, steel, and food. The nation's economic arteries were clogged at their busiest point. Even as Japan's economy began its post-war climb, transport policy experts warned that the country's recovery was at risk. The government faced a stark choice: patch up the old steam-driven network, or imagine something entirely new. The demand for mobility outpaced anything the old system could provide. In diet debates, politicians called the situation a national emergency, a threat not just to daily life, but to the future of Japanese industry and society. Out of this crisis, the idea of a new trunk line began to take shape. It wasn't just a matter of speed or comfort. For many, it became a moral and economic imperative to rebuild not only the nation's infrastructure, but its confidence and capacity to move forward. 2 men stood at the heart of the Shinkansen's creation, each driven by a different vision, yet united by a single goal. Shinji Sogo, president of Japanese National Railways, faced Parliament with a plan that stretched credulity. He promised a new railway, wider and faster than anything Japan had seen, standard gauge tracks instead of the country's narrow legacy rails, and a target speed of 200 kilometers per hour. Sogo fought for funding in the Diet, navigating fierce opposition from skeptics who saw only risk and ruin in the project's massive price tag. He secured a World Bank loan, using international scrutiny as leverage, and quietly shifted internal budgets to keep the project alive when costs soared. Meanwhile, Hideo Shima, the chief engineer, brought an aircraft designer's eye to the rails. After the trauma of the 1951 Sakuragicho fire, he returned to JNR determined to put safety above all else. Shima insisted on a dedicated right-of-way, physically separated from slower trains, and a continuous, welded rail system that reduced vibration and noise. He introduced automatic train control, a computer-based system that could override human error and bring a train to a stop in seconds. Shima's background in distributed traction meant that each car had its own electric motors, improving acceleration and redundancy. The engineering team built cars from lightweight aluminum, tested aerodynamic noses in wind tunnels, and calculated every curve for stability at unprecedented speeds. Pre-stressed concrete ties anchored the rails, absorbing the shocks of high-speed travel. For Shima, every design choice was a matter of life and death. For Sogo, each negotiation was a gamble for Japan's future. Together, they turned the Shinkansen from a desperate idea into a buildable system, one that would soon be ready to face the world. October 1st, 1964, at precisely 6 a.m., the first Series 0 Shinkansen, Hikari 1, pulled away from Tokyo Station. The polished white and blue train, shaped like a bullet, sliced into the morning with a speed that stunned onlookers, 210 kilometers per hour. Newspapers called it the fastest train in the world. Over 515 kilometers of fresh track stretched between Tokyo and Osaka, linking the country's two largest cities in just 3 hours, less than half the time of the old steam trains. Along the route, crowds lined bridges and platforms, waving flags and snapping photos. Television crews broadcast live images across the nation. The Olympic Games were only days away, and the world's eyes were on Japan. Foreign journalists filled the carriages, some clutching stopwatches, others jotting notes as Mount Fuji flashed by the windows. Inside the lead car, engineers monitored every dial and gauge. The project team, many of whom had spent years battling deadlines, budget cuts, and skepticism, now watched their creation run flawlessly. Dispatchers radioed updates as the train maintained its unprecedented speed, arriving in Osaka only minutes behind schedule, a performance that would soon become routine. For a nation still rebuilding, the Shinkansen's debut was more than a technical feat. It was a declaration. Japan had not only recovered from the devastation of war, it had achieved something no other country had dared. The bullet train became a symbol of possibility, a moment when the world paused to take notice. Crowds packed the platforms, and within just 3 years of its launch, the Shinkansen had carried over 100 million passengers. Seats sold out weeks in advance. Business travelers zipped between Tokyo and Osaka in a single day, a journey that once demanded an overnight stay. Tourism boomed. The economic corridor along the Tokaido line surged with new hotels, shops, and offices. National GDP rose by around 2% a year through the late 1960s. For many, the bullet train seemed to embody the promise of a new Japan, efficient, connected, and unstoppable. But behind the scenes, the numbers told a more complicated story. The project's final price tag reached 380 billion yen, nearly double early estimates. Funding strategies that kept construction moving, internal budget transfers, quiet reallocation of funds, and a high-profile World Bank loan became the subject of fierce debate. Diet hearings in 1963 exposed the scale of the overruns. Newspaper headlines questioned whether the nation had mortgaged its future for a single train line. Critics accused Japanese national railways of hiding the true cost. The public watched as Shinji Sogo, the president who had fought so hard for the Shinkansen, stepped down under pressure, accepting responsibility for the financial storm. Yet even as political fallout spread, the trains kept running. The surge in ridership and the visible economic lift made it difficult for even the harshest skeptics to argue with results. The controversy set a precedent for stricter oversight and transparency in future projects. But the lesson was clear. Ambition on this scale always comes with a price. Every Shinkansen journey begins with a ritual. Engineers in crisp uniforms checking each system with quiet precision, guided by a philosophy that values human life above all else. Since its first run in 1964, the Shinkansen has carried billions of passengers without a single fatality caused by train accidents. That record is no accident. It's the result of relentless discipline. From automatic train control systems to earthquake sensors that halt trains in seconds. Swans. Delays average less than a minute per train, even as millions travel daily. By the late 1980s, change swept through Japanese railways. In 1987, Japanese National Railways was split into regional companies under the JR Group, opening the door to new management styles and competition. The core commitment to safety and reliability never wavered. Engineers and conductors embraced Kaizen, continuous improvement, adapting to rising passenger expectations and new technologies. Innovation moved quickly. The N700S, launched in 2020, introduced lithium-ion backup batteries, AI diagnostics, and advanced tilt systems for smoother, faster rides. Meanwhile, the L0 maglev prototype shattered records, reaching 505 km/h on test tracks. International partners took notice. Japan's expertise shaped Taiwan's high-speed rail, influenced projects in India and the United States, and set the benchmark for safety and punctuality worldwide. Through every upgrade and export, the Shinkansen's original promise endures: speed, safety, and the discipline to never compromise on either. For engineers and passengers alike, it remains a symbol of what careful ambition can achieve. On October 1, 1964, Japan's Shinkansen launched at 210 km/h, cutting the journey from Tokyo to Osaka in half. In just 3 years, over 100 million passengers traveled the line, clear proof that bold investment in infrastructure could reshape a nation's future. The project's cost reached 380 billion yen, triggering political fallout and the resignation of key leader Shinji Sogo, while some financial records and internal debates remain sealed to this day. Yet the facts endure. Since its debut, the Shinkansen has recorded 0 passenger fatalities from accidents, and by 2025, daily ridership is projected to surpass 1 million. Its engineering principles now influence high-speed rail systems worldwide, from France to China. As new generations of trains, like the N700S and the 505 km/h maglev, continue to push boundaries, the Shinkansen stands as evidence that vision and discipline can drive lasting change. Its legacy is written into Japan's identity and into the rails that connect its cities, still moving forward.